Let's read question number 41. A developer needs to migrate an existing web application to AWS. The application will run on Amazon EC2 instances behind an application load balancer. The instances will run in an EC2 auto scaling group. The developer also wants to offload as many HTTP requests to the AWS infrastructure as possible to alleviate the excess burden on the EC2 instances. Which solution will meet these requirements? Okay. So the point is developer want to alleviate the excess burden on the EC2 instances. Move all the static content to the S3, move all the static content to the EBS multi-attach volume, move all the static content to EC2 instance store, and move all the static content to Amazon Elastic Cache. We know S3 is a cost-optimized storage service, and one of the widely used use case of S3 is a static website hosting. Let's choose option A and say confirm. So A is the correct option. S3 is an ideal choice for the web content because it is an object store. All the images, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and other static media can reside on S3. S3 will send the content directly to the client instead of through the web server. This process reduces the load on the web server and removes the need to store static content on each horizontally scaled instance. So A would be the correct choice. Okay, let's start with question number 42. A gaming company uses an Amazon Cognito user pool to allow users to sign into its mobile games. The company needs to add social identity providers to the user pool to simplify the way that users log into the games. What information must the company provide to the Amazon Cognito user pool to add each social IDP? You have four options. Option A is the identity provider URL, username, and password. Option B, the security assertion markup language metadata document. Option C, the access key ID and the secret key of the user. And option D, the app client ID and the app client secret. Okay. Now, if you have to basically provide a company in order to add social identity provider to the Amazon Cognito user pool, you need to pass app client ID and the app client secret. Let's see that. So D is a correct choice. You can just read about it. Let me scroll down. Social IDPs are based on OpenID. All OpenID provides require the client application to register. The results of the registration are an app client ID and the app client secret. Okay, so this would be the correct choice. Number 43, a developer is building an application using an Amazon API gateway REST API backed by an AWS Lambda function that interacts with an Amazon DynamoDB table. During testing, the developer observes high latency when making the request to the API. How can a developer evaluate the end-to-end latency and identify performance bottleneck? Whenever it comes to performance bottleneck, X-ray would be the choice because it is a service used by developers to debug the performance bottleneck. So B would be the correct choice. Enable and configure AWS X-ray tracing on API gateway and the Lambda function use X-ray to trace and analyze user request. If you will see other options in option A, it's talking about CloudTrail. It is used for API auditing for tracking the user activities. Option C is using CloudWatch logs, which will be used for monitoring the AWS services in real time. And D, which is talking about VPC flow log, it is something in order to capture the information of the traffic flowing in the VPC. Okay, so I will choose B as the option, and that is correct. Okay. You can see here, X-ray gives you the ability to trace latency issues with your API gateways APIs. Okay. It provides an end-to-end view of requests as they travel through your application, and that is a requirement. Okay. Number 44, a developer created configuration specifications for an AWS Elastic Beanstalk application in a file named healthcheck_url.yaml in the .ev extension / directory of their application source bundle. The file contains the following: option setting, namespace, option name, and value. After the application launches, the health check is not being run on the correct path, even though it is valid. What can be done to correct the configuration file? Let's see the option. Convert the file to JSON format, rename the file to .config extension, change the configuration section from options underscore settings to resources, change the namespace of the option settings to a custom namespace. Whenever we talk about a configuration file, the naming convention of the configuration file should be .config. So B will be the correct choice. Okay. If I'll show you here, configuration files in the .ev extension folder should be saved with the .config extension. After the change is deployed, the application performs health check by using /health_check URL. Okay. Number 45, a website allows user to upload photos to Amazon S3. An S3 event invokes an AWS Lambda function that uses the Amazon recognition detect labels operations to detect a real-world object with a photo. The website needs to store this data in a search index to allow users to quickly locate all the photos associated with a label. Which solution will meet this requirement? Now, website wants to store this data in the index, in a search index. So if you will read all the four options, A, B, C, and D, in A and B, it's talking about storing the username and label values as the S3 object tag. And in B, it is talking about storing the username and label values as the S3 object metadata keys. Okay. In option C, it is talking about insert an item for each S3 key label and user combination into DynamoDB table. Create a global secondary index with a username as a partition key and the label as a sort key. Call the query item API on the index to find all the objects that shares the username and label value. And in option D, it's talking about insert an item for each S3 key, label, and user combination into DynamoDB global secondary index. Okay. So C and D is talking about secondary indexes, but in D it is saying that inserting the item directly into global secondary index, which is not valid. So what is left in front of you? C. And anyhow, DynamoDB synchronize the records to be written into the DynamoDB global secondary indexes. So let's confirm the option C. Okay. And you can see why D is not correct. DynamoDB automatically synchronize each global secondary index with its base table. You can't insert items directly into an index. Okay. Number 46, a development team runs an extensive set of automated tests by using code build action in a code pipeline test stage. The test takes 30 minutes to run for each build. The team wants to reduce the time necessary to run the test by conducting multiple tests in parallel. To accomplish this goal, the team breaks the test into multiple independent segments. Which solution will meet these requirements? They're looking for executing these tests in parallel, so we can remove the option that is containing sequential as a part. So option C is saying configure multiple sequential code build action to run each segment within the code pipeline test stage. Remove it. Option D is talking about somewhere to change the compute time. Okay, that's not going to solve our problem of conducting the multiple tests in parallel. Now we have two options left, option A and option B. In option A, it is saying configure multiple parallel code pipeline stages. Okay, code pipeline is a pipeline designed for CI/CD. Option B is looking valid to me, which is saying that configure multiple parallel code build actions to run each segment in the code pipeline test stage. So code build is one part of the code pipeline which can be used in order to build and test the packages. Okay, so I will use B as an option, and this is correct. Number 47, a company is storing its application logs in Amazon CloudWatch logs. The logs must be encrypted at rest by an AWS KMS customer managed key. A developer is working on an application that is in violation of this requirement. What should the developer do to comply the requirement? One thing you have to keep in your mind, CloudWatch does not support the asymmetric keys. Okay, so remove the option which is including asymmetric key as a part of its statement. So I will remove A directly because it's talking about creating an asymmetric key. Again, if you have to modify the CloudWatch logs, you can't do it via management console. If you have to basically enable or if you have to associate the key with the log group, okay, so you can't do this action via management console. So remove the options which is including management console in the statement. So I have removed P and D. What is left in front of me? C. Modify the existing CloudWatch logs, log group by using CLI, create a symmetric KMS customer managed key, associate the key with the log group. Let's select it. And this is true. And you can read why B is not correct. You can't use the console to encrypt the CloudWatch logs log group with the customer managed key. Okay. Number 48, an e-commerce company must select a database to store product data for several millions product. Okay. The company must notify 3 separate systems whenever product data changes. The company has already established an Amazon simple notification service topic with a subscription for each system. The company must notify the SNS topic as soon as product data changes in the database. Which solution will meet these requirements? Company wants to store product data for several millions products. Okay. So for this type of requirement, DynamoDB is a suitable use case. DynamoDB help us out in order to store the data in a key value pair. Okay. So I will remove A and B, which is talking about RDS. You can just read these options. Store product data in RDS database instance that runs PostgreSQL. Create a database trigger to invoke the Lambda function. Write code to send each change event to the SNS topic. Option B, store product data in RDS database instance that runs PostgreSQL. Create a Lambda function that event bridge will launch on a set schedule. Write code to scan the database for recent changes. Send each change event to each SNS topic. C and D is talking about DynamoDB table. In C, it's talking about define a DynamoDB stream on the table, create a Lambda function with the stream as an event source. Write the code to send each change event to the SNS topic. In D, it is talking about using event bridge that will launch on a set schedule. Okay. So basically, we know that Lambda follows a polling invocation or pull-based invocation with DynamoDB. So we can define a stream on the table and we can use Lambda function with the stream as an event source. Let's confirm. And this is correct. You can read RDS with PostgreSQL. An RDS database that runs PostgreSQL can hold several millions product record, but the database can send a notification whenever a change occurs. However, with the exception of Aurora MySQL compatible addition, a database has no way to invoke a Lambda function. Okay, we have to invoke a Lambda function as a part of the statement they have given. Okay, but there is no provision to invoke a Lambda function. Okay. The second one was RDS database that runs PostgreSQL can hold several millions product record. You can run a Lambda function on this schedule. A Lambda function can connect to and query a relational database. However, you would not detect changes as soon as they occur by occasionally querying a database table to look for changes. Okay. So this is the option which is not making it true. Okay. And finally, if you will see D, you can read. Although it is possible to run Lambda function on schedule, you would not detect changes as soon as they occur by occasionally querying a database to look for the changes. Okay. So that is possible, but we have a direct integration. We can add DynamoDB stream as an event source for Lambda. Okay. A developer needs to create a serverless application that uses an event-driven architecture. What should the developer do to implement the application's ability to receive and process events? Okay. Serverless application, event-driven architecture. I am removing 2 options that including EC2, A and B because EC2 is not serverless. If I'll go to C and D, C is saying create a REST API gateway. Sorry, D is saying create a REST API gateway, create an AWS Lambda function called the API endpoint. That's not making my process event-driven architecture. So I will go with C. Create an Amazon SNS topic, create an AWS Lambda function, subscribe the Lambda function to the SNS topic, submits the event to the SNS topic. And that gives me the correct answer. Okay. Next one. A developer uses server-side encryption with customer-provided encryption keys to upload data to the S3. Later, developer wants to decrypt and download an encrypted object by using the getObject API call. Which information must the developer provide to meet the requirement? The answer would be object key and the encryption key. You need to pass it on if you want to decrypt and download an encrypted object. Okay. So C is the correct choice. You can read about it. The GetObject API call must specify the customer provided encryption key that is used to initially encrypt the data. Okay. So we will keep our discussion till here. In the next discussion, I am going to talk about more questions as a part of this official practice exam. Till that time, keep learning, keep exploring. Thank you very much for watching this video. I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.